Hi everyone, I'm Nicola Trowell and I'm the Partnerships and Digital Lead at Wiltshire Museum, and for the last year or so of my life I've been working closely with David and our wider team on developing the National Lottery Heritage Fund bid for the Assize Court.
And I'm David Dawson. I'm the director of the museum. So we're just going to run through, talk through the where we are with the project after the great news from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and where we're going next. So I'm just going to call up some pictures. So hopefully you can see that, and yeah. So the project is called Assizes for Devizes, Unlocking Wiltshire's Stories, and that's the official name of the project. And as you will have seen, this is the Facebook item that Nicola put up. We've been awarded funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund to bring the Assize Court really back to life. And the reaction we've had has been absolutely amazing. So you perhaps read there some of the comments on Facebook that people have put up. And we've had we have had hundreds of likes for the Facebook and Twitter post things, haven't we? And it's been really encouraging. There's always one or two, but the number, it's been amazing. So we're so grateful to people for their reaction. So we're just going to run through sort of where we are. The building itself, the Assize Court, is now owned by a completely separate charitable trust called the Devizes Assize Court Trust. That's because its job is to look after and own the building, hold the building, while the money is raised to restore it and to bring it back to life. They bought the building in 2019. In the meantime, a lot of work has been done to make the building as stable as possible. So although things do keep happening to it, it is basically okay, and including stripping out the asbestos, which cost £40,000. And we've been working on initial plans for its future as a community hub and the new home for the Wiltshire Museum. Now, we've been working on plans, sort of outline ideas for a while, and this is where we started off with what we really would like to be able to achieve, bringing the historic part of the building back to life, and then giving us the space we need to really create a really vibrant, exciting museum for the future. However, things have changed slightly since 2019. There's a little thing called COVID you might have come across, and that had two impacts. The National Lottery Heritage Fund actually closed down for a year to concentrate their funding on bailing out organisations to make sure that heritage organisations could survive the pandemic. And they also reduced put a cap on the maximum grant of £5 million. Now, that sounds like an awful lot, but as you'll hear, it's not necessarily as helpful as it might have been. And then you'll all be well aware of the cost of the building, the sort of inflation, and that has particularly impacted on the costs of building projects. Anything up to 40% increase in building costs. So instead, we are now looking at what will be a phased approach. And although the plan I'm showing you now looks really sort of polished and as though it's we really know what we're doing, this really still is back of an envelope. And although we have a full 3D survey of the building in detail, these plans are very much outline and really were done in order to be able to put together some outline costs that we needed for the application to the Heritage Fund. So if I just run through how this works, so perhaps you can see on the left-hand side the 4 columns. So this is the entrance in from Northgate Street, and the central atrium. There'll be a welcome desk and shop and place and some seating for a cafe. Out the back will be the sort of a canopy with additional seating. For those of you that know the Parade Cinema at Marlborough, it'll be something like they have at the front. Then on this side, well, the way the court works is that there are 2 courts, one on each side, and it's a mirror image with a smaller room at the front. So this will become our learning space for school groups, some of the art classes we run, for example, We run lots and lots of out of hours activities, and this will be capable of being open out of hours. So the rest of the building can be locked, but it'll be self-contained. It can be used for all sorts of meetings and things. And then here, this larger space, which is the Assize Court, that's where the judge from London would have come to hear major cases, things like murder and so on. That will become a multi-use event space, seating 120, 130 people, something like that, and can be used for all sorts of events, things like fairs and conferences and you name it. And then on the other side, here, this will be a gallery space to tell the stories of Wiltshire. The one at the front here, we think will probably be telling the story of the story of Devizes, and then we will put floors into both this court, which was the former magistrates' court, and also this court here, the Assize Court. As you'll see, this is phase 1. And this is what we are going to be developing over the next couple of years. But we've already looked at how the spaces might work. And I love this one, which is an initial idea for the atrium, where the suggestion is having an artist-led vision of a white horse sort of galloping over the entrance desk, and you can see visually how that would be stunning. That would give you a real wow as you walk into the building. And then on the right hand side at the top, gallery telling the story of Devizes, and below looking at our internationally important Bronze Age collections from the time of Stonehenge. Phases 2 and 3 will do the bits that we really want to do, but we can't afford because of that £5 million cap from the Heritage Fund. So there are cells underneath the main Assize Court. We want to be able to open those up so that people can see them. We need to improve the lift access to go down to that level. Better toilet facilities, including a changing places toilet, better cafe, more community space. We need to create a collections research centre to relocate the museum collections, and we'd love to be able to put the Assize Court back to its former glory and remove the temporary floor that we'd be putting in during phase 1. So that's sort of the plan in outline. Also, between when we started working on this and today, of course, we now know that Wadworth are relocating their production from the Northgate Brewery site to London Road. And there is a planning application in, as I suspect you will have seen, because it's sort of front page news in the Gazette, of a housing development alongside sort of replacing a lot of the warehousing at the brewery. So we very much support the idea of development on that site, but we're also very keen to support the vision that was outlined in Wiltshire Council's wharf development strategy. And this is this was done a couple of years ago and is intended to inform landowners of the sorts of uses that the council planners would like to see coming forward. And what's proposed here, as you perhaps can see, is that this is the Northgate Brewery. This is Wadworth's Brewery, which is not part of the current planning application. And for there to be, for the passageway through to be opened up and to lead down to the canal. And for this to be public space, the public realm. And you can imagine this would be filled with coffee shops, delicatessens, frock shops, all sort of make it a really lively, exciting place that will draw people down to the canal and then link up the canal on this side, because at the moment people have to cross the canal to the other side, the other bank, to use the towpath. The idea is to bring a pathway here, which will bring more people into the town. Something like sort of over 150, 200,000 people a year use the canal, and many of them just have no idea that Devizes is actually there. So the aim is to boost tourism. So we think this is really important, and we want to see this vision brought to life. So back to our project, because our current plans, or the plans we started on, didn't take that opportunity of the redevelopment of the Wadworth site into account, because we didn't know it was going to happen. So the next, the overall project, nearly £5 million of that will be about just restoring the historic building, making it into essentially a white box, bringing it back, making it waterproof, weathertight, putting the windows back, all those sorts of things. Then we've got a cost for fitting it out, installing displays, new showcases, and doing lots of work with communities that Nicola will be saying a bit more about later. And then you can see 2.4 million for contingency. That's because we will have got our sums wrong, as I'm often known to do, and also an allowance for inflation. So that brings us to a total of 11.6 million. Not all of that we need to raise in cash for various technical reasons. Some of that is the staff time of existing members of staff in the museum, which sort of counts towards that total, and also the support we had from our amazing team of volunteers. That has a financial cost and a financial value that goes into those sums. So the obvious question is, where on earth is that money going to come from? And we have sort of an idea. So 5 million from National Lottery Heritage Fund. We've asked them for the full amount and they haven't said no yet. Trusts and foundations, we've got a pretty good idea of where those would come from. Major donors, we certainly need support from some major donors, and then various other public and private sources as well. So that's, we have a fundraising strategy which shows where that would come from. Because the application we put together, and you can see here the timeline, we submitted our application in February 2023. We still haven't totaled up how many pages it was, have we, Nicola? But my guess is it's somewhere between sort of 500-600 pages worth of the application when you take all the reports into account,
if not more.
Yeah, so it's not as though it was just a couple of sides of A4 and a wing and a prayer. It was a lot of detailed work. So we now have 3 ticks on our timeline, but this one that we've had is the important one, because though we still have a lot to do, we'll talk in a moment about what that is before we can open in, at the moment, the plan is 2030. Because we've got this grant, we are now on our way towards a major grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. It's not guaranteed, but the vast majority of projects that get the award we've just had then go on to be successful at the next stage. Because what they want us to do is to plan the project, iron out all the details, iron out all the issues, and so that we're ready to go. The Heritage Fund are concerned about risk. So the further on you are with your planning, the more detailed the planning is, the less risk there is in the project. And the more certainty is that you're not going to go wildly over budget, which is what they're truly scared of. And if all goes well, the next bid is due in the summer of 2025, with sort of 3-4 months or so for them to assess it. The building work, if we're lucky, would then start sometime in 2026, because if we're successful, we then have to go out to tender. Then there's a lag between when we award a contract and when the building work actually starts. And if all goes well, we would be open in 2030. But I think I'll leave the rest up to you, Nicola, if that's okay, because you're the real expert on this, because you're going to be leading this part of the project.
Yes. Okay, we're going to do our fun next slide, please, Pete, aren't we? All right, so as David said, this phase that we've got the award for from the National Lottery Heritage Fund is called the development phase, because we're developing our plans. So can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So we have roughly around 2 years to complete this phase of the project. And this, as David said, is a really important piece of the project, because it's where we get to develop all the plans. And very importantly, what we want to do is make sure we're working with our local communities, our audiences, and the people that are currently sort of underrepresented in our audiences, to make sure that the project in itself is as inclusive as possible and that it serves the needs of Devizes, the wider area, and all the people that want to visit the museum. So during this phase, we're going to be very busy because we've got to, there's a lot to come. We've got to develop the architectural plans. So as David showed earlier, we've got some initial outlines, but this is the point where we're going to get into a lot more detail, work them up to the point where we would apply for planning permission to get that, so that when we apply for the next bid and get the large amount of money, we're ready to go. We also, as David mentioned earlier, need to work up some detailed plans of what the galleries will look like. So making sure that we're looking at what themes we want to share with people, what even sort of where the cases would go, what the objects would look at. We need to make sure that we know that we can fit everything we want to in the galleries and that we can tell the whole story of Wiltshire in a very comprehensive way. And one of the things that I'm really excited for doing, but it's a very big part of the project, will be creating a 5-year, what we call activity plan. And what this is looking at events, volunteering, courses, activities, working with our communities to build up lots of events and activities that we do alongside the project. So some of those might be working with community groups to advise on the project, or some of it might be doing actual bits of making the project, so designing banners to go on pieces of the building, or for example, if we're going to do a ramp up to the building, having working with community groups to design what that ramp might look like and how those stories work. So we've got 2 years to go out to the community and really work with lots of people to make this an exciting programme for not only Devizes but wider Wiltshire as well. And then one of the biggest tasks, which I think is going to fall quite a lot to David, myself and the museum team, is, as David mentioned earlier, we've just submitted an application to get this award, which was over 500, 600 pages long. We've got to do that all over again, plus quite a lot more. So we've got to submit what I reckon will probably be around 800, 900 pages by the time for this delivery phase application, which will need to go in the summer of 2025. And with that, around 18, 19 supporting documents. And then, as David mentioned, we also need to secure quite a lot of fundraising, match funding to go with that as well. So we're not going to have a quiet couple of years for any means. Could I have the next slide, please? So I'm not going to go with this in any detail, but this is shown purely just to show you quite how many bits of information, documents and things that we need to do. So this was our timeline that we submitted as part of the bid in February for this phase. So this details everything that we need to do. And I'm sure we've missed out several things in it. But for example, it starts with appointing project staff, which will take place up until around September, October time. And then we've also got to procure consultants, which will again take some time. So the project work that you will see will start really happening at the start of next year. But in the meantime, we're going to be very busy behind the scenes, making sure that everything is ready. And then we really have 2024 and half of 2025 to get out in the community, work with our audiences, work with local people to build up these plans, and then also work with our consultants and our architects to all get it to the stage where we can submit that bid in 2025. And we can say to the Heritage Fund, we've got this plan, we know it works, and we're ready to go. So just give us the money. Next slide, please. So this is obviously quite a lot of work, so we are going to need some extra support. So as I mentioned, we're going to be recruiting some new staff to join us, and they will be working specifically on the project. So there will be doing lots of different roles doing that, a lot of which will be sort of going out and working with the community, but also doing some more of the things behind the scenes as well. And we will also be working with consultants, lots of different consultants, for example, ones to help us on activity planning, ones to help us really build up the interpretation plans for the galleries, one to help with evaluation, because we've got to evaluate everything we do as well, so make sure that we're incorporating that learning. And we're going to be doing some training for staff and for volunteers as well, because what we want to do is make sure that we upskill our team so that as we go through this project, our staff and our volunteers and everyone who's involved is learning a lot. And as we go forward, we get more confident, and we feel that, as David mentioned, we might have a few more phases of the project to do after this first one, so that we're really ready and set to get on with that. And most importantly, I think we're going to need a lot of chocolate to keep us going through this. Right, next slide, please. So what we've got planned for the next few years is what we're calling an outline activity plan, which has lots of different ideas of how we want to work with communities, how we want to get the local people and wider audience involved. But just to give you a few examples of things we're going to be doing, in 2024, we're planning what we're calling an ideas station exhibition. So once we've started working the plans up a little bit, we're going to be designing an exhibition that will be open to everyone to come and see, where you'll be able to see some of the initial plans and be able to vote on bits that you like, bits that you don't like. So it's going to be very interactive and give you a real chance to see where the project's developing and give you a chance to have your say in what ideas you think we should explore more. As I mentioned, we're going to be setting up advisory groups. So one of these will be community advisory panel. We'll also be having an access advisory panel, a young persons panel, and a teachers school panel as well. And this is really to make sure that at the heart of what we do and what we design, the needs of people in the area and the wider visitors are incorporated. And then, like I said, we're going to be doing lots of fun community group projects. So already we've been working with, in this picture, is Alzheimer's support. You can probably tell this was during the midst of lockdown when they were doing a virtual consultation with us, which was good fun. But we're looking forward to now being able to actually go out and go into places and speak to people and get those views. We'll be doing lots of community events and pop-up days, so expect to see us around as we go down the route of our plans. We'll be coming around asking more views and showing what's going on, and we'll be doing some fun events for families and different activities at the same time. We'll be doing some school mini museum projects as well, again to get local schools involved in the project. And we're going to be working on some specific ones with young people, to do with things like Minecraft, and I've been learning lots about Minecraft and things like that. It's a slightly different world, but we have a museum youth panel who I think are very happy to help guide us through doing those sort of projects as well. So this is just a taster of what's to come, really, but the next 2 years we're going to be very busy, but we're going to have a lot of exciting things to come up. And while there's not going to be any building work going on, there will be a lot going on in the community to get involved in with the project. And I think that's my last slide.
That's brilliant, Nicola. Just before we hand over to you for any questions, just one thing that sort of strikes me we haven't really talked about, which is that we've been talking to lots of people who have developed this sort of project before and have gone before us. So we've learning the lessons of our colleagues, particularly those in Wessex museums, the Dorset Museum, for example, and also other people across the country. So we're trying to pick up what works and how we can use their experience to make things both as easy for us as possible as we go through the process, but also to make sure we have the best possible result. So I think if you're happy, Nicola, I think that's us done, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So over to you for any questions. So if you'd like to go down, take your cursor down to the bottom of the screen where it says Q&A, and if you'd like to tap in any questions you've got, if there are any. I don't know if you've got anything else you would like to add, Nicola, while people are thinking.
Just because I know there's quite a few volunteers on the call as well, is just to say that we will be having some volunteer opportunities linked to the project as we go as well. So there'll be lots of time for you guys to get involved, and we'll be recruiting more volunteers as well. But we'll be working a lot with volunteers and with members on getting views for the project. So I'm afraid you'll be hearing quite a lot more from us. Anything else, David, that I've forgotten?
No, it's really good.
The only other thing I suddenly realised, I'm not sure we actually said, was how much we're getting from the Heritage Fund for this phase.
Oh, right. Which is 307,000?
Something around there.
180, do I remember?
Yeah.
And the overall spend for this development phase is about 700,000, but of that, quite a substantial amount, about sort of 80 or 100,000, is things like staff time and the volunteer contribution, which again is given a financial value. So Penny has just said, thanks. She says, thanks so much. It's interesting, but she can't make the coffee morning. Well,
that's not good enough, Penny.
We hear the same thing all over again, but in a bit more detail, I think. Right. Chris said, how long do you anticipate having to effectively run 2 museums, particularly now you have to add more phases to the project because of the funding restrictions? Okay, I'll have a get back.
Okay, that, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to kick the can down the road on that one a bit, because I would love to not have to close the museums at the same time, if you see what I mean. What would be great is to close at Long Street one day and then open at the Assize Court on the other, but that's not going to happen. What I would like to be able to do is to continue to have exhibitions at on the Long Street site for as long as possible, while we're moving, if you like, while we're installing displays in the Assize Court. So we can have the exhibition gallery open more or less independently of the rest of the building. But I'm sure we'll have to close. It might be 6 months, it might be a year. It's too early at the moment for us to have mapped that out. I think the unspoken bit of your question, Clive, is that what happens to the Long Street buildings, and what the intention is at the moment is that we will have essentially put all the public facing stuff at the Assize Court. So that will be galleries and coffee bar and all those sorts of things will be at the Assize Court. What we'll then do is turn part of the current site into a collections research or a collections discovery centre, because we have 1.4 kilometres of shelving of collection storage in the museum at the moment. So we've got probably three blocks of the building. So we would move all the collections into one of those 3 blocks, and then that would release the other 2 blocks probably to be sold as housing. But of course we can't do that until we've moved the displays. So that's going to take a couple of years once we've opened the Assize Court. And despite all appearances to the contrary, Nicola only has 1 pair of hands.
Sadly.
All our colleagues, it would be far too much to try and do all that at the same time. There's just too many moving parts.
Yeah.
So phase 1 is open the Assize Court with exhibition and displays. Phase 1.5 is the Collections Research Centre, and then phases 2 and 3 are developing the Assize Court site to be able to move over there completely. We've got a timescale of that, which is to be done by 2060, at which point I'll be 100. So that means I'll be comfortably 6 feet under by then.
And I'll be 2 years off retiring. I've worked it out.
Okay. Right, so sorry to give the long answer to that, but I hope that helps. Oh, and someone has said, in the light of the phase plans, Long Street cannot be sold, I suppose. Well, in 2060, the remaining bit could be, but the idea would be to sort of release bits of it as we get to do other bits. It's phase 3, probably phase 3 at the moment, but everything might change as when we would actually be able to release the rest of Long Street. And Philip has said, is there already an architect working with you on the project, or will you be appointing a new one for the rest of the project? The answer to that is we ran a full procurement on the appointment of what's called OJU, following the European regulations. We had, and that's went through a series of steps. We did a public advert, which was on the front page of the Architects Journal, and we had 57 responses to that. We whittled those down to a short list of 10, of whom 8 submitted a more detailed submission, and then we held a beauty contest of 3 of those, and from those a company called Purcell were selected. So they're our appointed architects, and they should be able to see the project all the way through, because we ran a full open procurement process to follow the project, to take the project all the way through.
And that was back in 2019, was that?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And Val says, what is the plan for the library? At the moment, the library, it goes with the collections research, the collections discovery centre. So that would relocate to whatever bit of the building we will use. At the moment, the favourites, we haven't taken a final decision because, of course, we've got plenty of time for that. But at the moment, the plan is either to put all the collections into the back of the building, where the lecture room is and the art gallery, to use that for the Collections Research Centre. The other idea is to put it into if you're looking at the building, the Georgian townhouse on the right, the one where the offices are in the top. And if we go with the lecture room idea, then I see the lecture room as being the library, which would be wonderful. But it would probably makes more sense in terms of the use of the building to have it in the Georgian townhouse, and in which case, again, anything might change. I've got in mind the first floor gallery, which is currently the Devizes gallery, that wonderful one that runs the full sort of width of the building. And we've got another one. One from Clive. Thank you, David. Nicola, you've got a job for life. Yeah, right.
I think so.
I'll be 6 feet under by the time the whole thing is done. But there we are. Unless any of us win the lottery and win one of these sort of £50 million jackpots.
Yes, yeah. So if anyone knows anyone, please do let us know.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that is something perhaps we could highlight, which is that we, for the next 2 years, as we've indicated, we need to have know where, or be able to show where 80% of the match funding will come from. But we're not going to be asking people for fivers and to do things like buy a brick or sort of buy a roof slate or something like that, because at this stage we cannot guarantee that the project will go ahead. We're very confident, and something like 90 to 95% of projects that get this development funding go through to deliver their project. But it would not be right to be asking people to contribute sort of £5, their £5, if we can't give it back if the project doesn't happen. Now, if you're going to give us 5,000 or 15,000 or 50,000, then that's quite different. So in this stage, we're after the major donors, and then we will need all the help we can get once we get through into the delivery stage. And at that point, we really will be asking for everyone's support. But then we'll have a very clear idea of how much we need and what we're doing, and people will know what they're giving to as well. Oh, and another one from Penny. Oh, and will the off-site storage sites remain as well? The answer to that is yes. Yes. We have 2 off-site stores, one on the outskirts of Devizes and one in Amesbury. The Amesbury store is starting to fill up. The idea is that will keep us going for archaeology for 25 years or so. It'll just cost too much to have storage, on-site storage for the Assize Court site. And other things may happen between now and then. So I think with that seems to be all the questions. So thank you very much for coming. I hope you've found that interesting, and thank you for your support. The support we've had so far, both sort of all the goodwill messages and also the commitments of real cash from a whole series of individuals and organisations, particularly Devizes Town Council, have helped us to get where we are. Without that support, the project would not be moving forward.
No. And it's how long have you been working on this, David?
There's one answer, which is about 2 days after I moved to Devizes and first saw the Assize Court and thought, yeah, we've got to have that. So 2008, you could say, but in real, the board took a decision in 2017 to start looking at this really, really seriously.
So it's been a long process to get here, and as David said, things like COVID haven't helped, but
It's cost us 3 years.
Yeah, we value all the support of all our members and volunteers who've stuck with us and kept believing that we would get here.
Eventually.
Yes. So it's quite a lot of hard work to do now, but as we say, we're over a very big hurdle, and it's all smooth sailing from here on, right, David?
I wish. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Hi.
Stop the recording.